Hi, thanks for coming. I know it's a weekend and Saturday, that too in the second half. So I'll be talking about automating security and compliance with AI-based analyzer. Before that, I'll just give a quick introduction about myself. I'm working in Red Hat as a technical account manager. Basically, we work very closely with the customers directly with respect to the Red Hat products. I'm looking after a few of the banks, and the challenges which we see is something which I try to address, or the tool which can address those challenges, right? So this is my agenda. We'll see why current traditional security is not enough when we are talking about DevOps. Now it's DevSecOps. What are the changes? How AI can help in DevSecOps? Then the open source tools that are available like ThreatMapper and Trivy, which can be leveraged. And I'll be talking more about ThreatMapper and then the key takeaways, right? So currently, we see a lot of challenges with the traditional security, right? And it's not enough because the development cycle of the things which are getting developed on cloud native is quite fast compared to the traditional development cycles, right? And the security teams are not able to cope up with the speed of the the K-native development, right? That's why we see different organizations use different teams for different platforms. Then it becomes more chaotic. Like there is a single security team who has to take care of different platforms, and the security tools with respect to platform changes, and it introduces more challenges and chaos, right? Because of that, we sometimes see a lot of false positives as well. Because I personally work with few of the banks, and they find it challenging to understand how exactly read this information with respect to the security, and they're not able to make it out. If it's a real threat, a real alert, or an false positive, right? And because of that, sometimes they'll be missing on the vulnerabilities, and that may end up going into an production and have some compliance issues later on. Too many tools, people without proper understanding of the platforms and development, handling the security can cause issues, right? And these are the challenges which we see with the traditional setup, right? Now, how AI can help in this overall thing, right? Because now cloud native is more complex. It needs more smarter ways to address the security concerns, right? Manual and static checks may not help, considering the platforms are different, the application teams, there are so many application teams, and then a single security team is taking care of it, right? So let's say if they can introduce some way of who can be an assistant to the overall scanning and security evaluation, then the AI tool can really help. So it can bring an advantages like it can help us to prioritize the fixes as well as the risk which we are carrying. It can even help us to reduce the false positive that we generally see, and those false positive needs and manual intervention to read it out and understand what's going on and all, right? It can even suggest the remediation steps in a very quick manner. Let's say I'm a person from a background who maybe just understand Windows. I don't know much about an Linux or any of the different streams of an OS, but I might be still responsible to make sure everything is in compliant, everything is following a particular standard within the organization. So I can leverage the remediation steps given, and then I will be in a position to implement it, right? It can even, if we have an AI, it can even learn, because it's a closed loop thing which keeps going on, right? Which leverage the learning, can the same information can be used to retrain the models and so on, right? And as an outcome, we have fast and accurate security decisions when it comes to fixing the CVEs or fixing the configuration drips and so on. It can even reduce the alert fatigue, because let's say if someone is not aware about a platform and is keep receiving an alert, and he is not able to differentiate between if it's a really an alert or just an kind of duplication of an alert, right? So all of those things AI can definitely help us with. Now these are the two tools, ThreatMapper and Trivy, right? So when it comes to security, now everyone, like every industry is talking about shift left approach, right? Where we need to fix things at the time of build itself, rather than getting something landed into an pre-prod or prod and then fix it later. So Trivy is the one who generally takes care of shift left security, where everything gets scanned at the time of build itself. The developers will be using the appropriate packages and binaries which are scanned by a particular tool, and it confirms that okay, there are no pending CVs or any known vulnerabilities in the packages or tools or images which they are using, right? But still, it may happen, there is something which moves to in production and then something gets discovered later, because some applications might be pulling information or pulling some libraries or binaries after the build as well during the runtime, right? So even the runtime security is important. That's where ThreatMapper comes into a picture. So Trivy takes care of the security during the build, whereas ThreatMapper is mainly responsible for taking care of the security in runtime, right? It has different use cases. ThreatMapper provides additional advantages over Trivy, where you can visualize the attack surface as well. It even scans your networks. It can point on the ThreatMapper console itself that where does the CV is discovered, and what kind of an impact it can have on the overall environment as well as an application. So it just summarizes everything on a single pane, and then you can visualize it through the console, right? So this is a high-level architecture of ThreatMapper, right? It generally works on a client-server kind of an architecture, where you have a central console, right, which can be deployed either on an virtual machine, or it can be deployed on any of the container platform. It generally runs as a container, right? Once you have management console deployed, then you can implement the sensor. So ThreatMapper supports different kind of a workload. You can have Kubernetes clusters, you can have a standalone running Docker host, or even you can manage virtual machines or hosts which are part of your Kubernetes cluster. So it supports scanning of everything. Even it supports the serverless from AWS. So it runs sensor on all of these components, and then it scans the information, send it back to the management console, where in management console we have information stored in a PostgreSQL database. It just summarizes, and then you see a graphical representation of a data, right? It even supports API client, and even so it has two modes basically. It even has agentless mode, where it supports scanning of your cloud infrastructure. You can just create and read-only user access, pass on the keys to ThreatMapper console. It can scan your cloud infrastructure and give you a recommendation based on what you have configured. If there is a configuration drift, or let's say if you have configured an S3 bucket which is kind of publicly accessible, might not be a right configuration, it can even give you those recommendations based on accessing your cloud infrastructure. So this is a high-level architecture, right? So the key features, if I have to talk about ThreatMapper, is you can visualize the attack path and risk prioritization. Generally, most of the security tools will be giving you an CV list based on their CVSS scores, right? So ThreatMapper, ThreatMapper analyze things, and then it identify, which is the CV or which is an configuration drift which has a more impact specific to your environment, and then it prioritize it accordingly, and you can see it on your console, right? It has that threat graph. It has risk-based prioritization. That's what I was talking about. Then during the runtime, it even supports the secrets deviation. Let's say if you're using any of the secrets in a plain text format, or the secret which is having your username and password, all of those things, it can scan your environment, detect it, and then report it to you on the console. It even supports malware detection with Yara-based tools, runtime software bill of material generation, right? Let's say if we talk about workload, it just generates this SBOM file, send it back to the console, then it scans it against the known definition of the CVs, and then accordingly it prioritizes and show it on the console, right? And even it supports integration with different tools like Splunk, PagerDuty, Jira. It has a lot of integrations where you can integrate it to get a notification, or you want to get an alert if, let's say, if it's performing some action or it had detected some CVs. it can report it with the help of integrations. Right? So now, if I have to talk about the main differentiator between the threat mapper and the other security tool is the integration of an AI. Now they have recently launched ThreatRx, which is their AI engine, where they have integrated OpenAI and AWS Rockbed. So these are the two modules they have integrated with ThreatMapper, where how it helps is like, let's say if it identifies any of the CV, generally other security tools, it just gives you an alert, or they just keep you they just keep you informed. Okay, we have detected the CV, your environment is impacted, and now it's you who has to take an action. But it won't generally recommend you the steps you need to do. That's where ThreatRx comes into an picture. It gives you an recommendation steps as well, right? It uses LLM, which is locally hosted. Then it generates the remediation steps for you, and you have an option to either execute it from there, or you reevaluate if in case you're comfortable with the specific technology. Let's say if Linux, then it just maybe patching an RPM. If it's some configuration drift, it will give you an hint about what is the configuration drift and how you can fix it. So it gives you an end-to-end steps with the justification, so that you can leverage that and perform an remediation action, right? So these are the key takeaways. AI definitely gonna play a huge role in security as well, where we can use same platform for different workload, right? Because when it comes to security, I've seen personally in case of banks or in case of any enterprises, dedicated team of security engineers will be taking care of different platforms, and many of the times we have seen they are not comfortable with the platform which they are taking care, because they belongs to a security background. So they will have a single view on for looking at things. So this kind of tools with like they can consider AI as a co-pilot, where they can get an information which they need to make themselves familiar and to fix it, right? So ThreatMapper can deliver AI-driven vulnerability detection as well as remediation, right? So these are the key takeaways from my session. If in case you have any questions, now I'm open to the questions.
So since the LLMs are run locally, then there's no really like a, normally we look at these problems where, okay, I'm gonna use AI, but I don't really want it to scan my code, or I don't want it to scan particular parts of my code, or I don't want it to learn from my code, because maybe my code is not everyone's open source, right? There are companies that maybe this is infrastructure. There's lots of companies that they just take a lot of open source code and they slap it together, and basically the infrastructure code is then their product. So this is not the case since the LLM is running locally, correct?
Yeah. So generally they have two options. As of now, it just the LLM supports in a connected way, where they go to an internet, fetch and remediation steps from there, and give to you on the prompt in the ThreatMapper console itself. But let's say the scenario which you're talking about, where the companies may not be in a position to share their code, but they can still give an access to the local instance of an LLM modules which are running. So they need to develop the module, develop the interface, and then integrate with ThreatMapper, so that the information remains locally. Okay, if no other questions, then thank you.